Welcome to Buffalo Campday Recap. I'm Thad Brown along with Carl Jones. Today it is day 6 for the Bills, July the 30th. The first practice finally where the Bills suited up in full gear. And as you might expect, things got a little bit testy. Last play of practice, maybe last play because this happened. Josh Allen running a quarterback draw. We could have a long conversation about why teams run quarterback draws in situations where the quarterback can't be tackled. That's for a different podcast. Regardless, Allen was heading towards the goal line. Jordan Phillips was there. If it were a game, I think Phillips probably makes the tackle. In this situation, Phillips bumped Josh Allen a little. You know, it was more than a push, not nearly a thump. It was on the right shoulder for what that's worth. And Allen was unhappy. Immediately stopped the play, turned around, yelled at Phillips. Players jumped in from both sides. There was a giant pile. 10 or 12 guys moved Jordan Phillips away from the quarterback. A couple guys made sure Josh Allen didn't get hurt. It was your typical training camp fight in which there was much sound and fury that signified almost nothing. That being said, the quarterback got mad today, Carl, in a training camp fight. That itself is kind of a unique deal.
It's definitely rare. I mean, it's usually the big guys up front that are like going back and forth, or the guys on the perimeter being testy, but rarely do you see the guy in the red jersey being in the middle of the scrum, starting the scrum. So I guess that point right there was kind of interesting to see. But from our vantage point, we really didn't see anything that warranted his reaction, so I thought maybe that was a little bit of an overreaction. However, they do have rules that we're not aware of, or maybe it's unwritten a little bit, like, hey, don't touch the arm, don't touch the hand, or whatever. Or, like I told you earlier, maybe Josh just wanted to get practice over with for the day. Sometimes, you know, I'm not feeling it no more, and I know that if I start this practice will be over with. So maybe that's what Josh was getting into, but nonetheless, nothing over the top. It was just first day of pads, emotions flying a little bit, and guys just having fun. And
to be fair, too, yesterday, Josh Allen had a play where Ed Oliver fell at his legs. Allen went down. It was one of those plays where, like, you know, your breath catches in your throat just for a minute, realizing that that's not what the quarterback should be doing. So if Josh was a little nervy, you know, these two things happening back-to-back days, I can understand that. I think overall, though, it was an overreaction on Allen's part. And afterward, as per usual, whoever the first guy is to talk to the media gets the unfortunate job of explaining what happened. And today, Carl, is Mitch Morse.
Yeah, Mitch Morse, you know, the guy reliable for Josh Allen. And that was the first three questions were asked all about that skirmish right there. And Mitch Morse gave some good perspective on it, and how maybe the quarterback isn't the one that's not usually involved in this. However, it's Josh Allen, so what can you expect?
We've already been here a whole week. Guys aren't sleeping very well, away from their families. You put on pads. The anticipation behind pads can build up. You know, it's just a more physical game out there when the pads are on. So, yeah, stuff like that, especially in the first day, is going to happen. You know, it's unfortunate at times, but at times you work through some stuff and come out as a better team on the other side.
So beyond the fight stuff, there was actually hitting, and you got a chance to really watch linemen legitimately play NFL football for the first time. So, you know, thoughts on today's practice for me. The one guy who stood out in terms of the linemen, and really I was actually kind of disappointed. I didn't think the Bills did as much hitting or live stuff as you might expect. But I thought Greg Rousseau had a pretty darn good day. He went around Quesenberry, the tackle who was in for the 4 tackles for our 4 offensive linemen who are missing. We'll get to that in a little bit. He had another bull rush on a stunt, which put an offensive lineman on his backside. I thought Rousseau looked strong. I thought he looked quick. This is a guy that I have not been high on. I think I've made that pretty clear a few times that I've talked about it on the radio or whatever. But today, I thought he looked pretty solid. And another guy I have to bring up is Nick Macleod. The corner just keeps making plays. Had another very nice interception today. He's got a very big uphill battle to make this team. I've looked at the roster a couple times the last couple days, and it doesn't feel like there's any surprise guys who have a legitimate road to making the team. But Nick Macleod keeps making plays. It's going to make that decision pretty hard.
I mean, like Mickey D said earlier, if you're making plays, you know, we're going to find a way to get you on the field. He's talking about Khalil Shakir when he was speaking of that. But going back
By the way, Mickey D is Sean Mcdermott. I like that. That's going to get into my lexicon.
There we go. But going back to the D-line, another young guy who maybe I was expecting, you know, first day of pads, you want to see how the younger guys react, right? You know, we've been in pajamas since May, right?
Yeah,
so you want to see how these guys react. And Epinesas may not be a rookie, but I still want to see how he's reacting, you know, big summer for him. You know, we want to see what steps he's going to take. And albeit the first day, and we've only been here for 6 days, really wasn't all too impressed. I mean, he's a guy who the weight's been going up and down, so we don't know what type of rusher he wants to be. Is he want to be more agile? Is he trying to bull rush? And today I really didn't see anything that stood out, like Rousseau with those splash plays that he made. I know it's early, first day, But when he has an uphill battle to crack that rotation, I want to see more. I want to see more pop, more splash. So I'm looking forward to see if he can, bounce back from here on out. But today I was not too impressed with what I saw out of his end. However, on the other side of the ball, someone who I have been impressed with, who's throughout this camp has just been steady, putting his doing his 111 is Isaiah Mckenzie, man. I mean, he had a catch right in front of us in the back end zone where nice little toe drag, nice little acrobatic catch right in front of us. And if he's able to stack those days, day in and day out, and I saw your tweet about Jamison Crowder better get back fast because Mckenzie just keeps doing his job and putting splash plays here and there. I don't see where Jamison Crowder can be like, oh, what I bring to the table is better than Mckenzie, because Mckenzie has an element that he doesn't have, and that's his explosiveness and his elusiveness. So if he's able to continue to, bring those type of days that he had today to the table, I think the Bills have a solid slot receiver for sure.
Yeah, Mckenzie's catching the back of the end zone was one of those high-level 9 out of 10 plays. Also want to bring up Dane Jackson quick. You and I have talked about him a little. Kaiir Elam has gotten the headlines at corner because of the physical battles, the all-out, not all-out, but the fighting post-snap, post-whistle a few times against Stephon Diggs. Dane Jackson's been quietly very competent. Not spectacular, not a lockdown kind of guy, but, very, very, last year one of the things that hurt him was that he would give up, he'd make the spectacular play and then give up the deep one. He hasn't given up many of the deep ones this year, so I think he's had a very solid, steady camp to where if the Bills have to or want to play him, I think what he's shown should be encouraging for sure. Now, we mentioned a little while ago about the injuries on the offensive line. A lot of guys are missing practice. Carl brought up Jamison Crowder, still out. On the offensive line itself, Deion Dawkins still excused for personal reasons. Seems like a more serious personal reasons type thing. Doesn't feel like something that would make him miss legitimate games, but something that from a personal family point of view is more concerning than just he needed a day off to take care of something. Spencer Brown, same as always, working on the side, not in team drills. Same thing for Roger Saffold. Ryan Bates, general soreness, what Sean McDermott said. None of those injuries seem very serious. McDermott put them all in the day-to-day basket, as is Micah Hyde. Scare on the field yesterday. Hyde was on the field today. He obviously wasn't practicing, but looked fine, moved around fine. Didn't seem like that's going to be a very serious issue at all. Again, this was the first day in pads for the Bills. For Sean McDermott, he always talks about that every single time this happens. Even though he's not a player, it's still something he gets excited about.
I didn't sleep well last night. I woke up, as one of those things, I know we've all been there. It's like, why didn't I sleep well? And I think it's, ever since the time I've been 7 years old, this is pads and this is football, and it's always been like that. And so I know I'm not playing, but I think that's what it is. It's just in your bones,
And similar to Sean McDermott, I told Eric Snyder this yesterday. The first day of pads is always, you look forward to it the entire offseason. As a DB, I'm not going to be honest, I'm not the one that was out there rah-rah in the Oklahoma drill trying to put someone on their butt, but it still signified the return of real football, right? And, getting the pass popping, all that little jawing back and forth, okay, next snap, don't worry about it, we'll let these talk. So definitely was cool to see that happen, and wasn't as physical as maybe we thought it would be. They didn't go live at all, and that's probably by design. But still cool to see, and from my perspective, seeing it on field, up close and personal, that was awesome.
So we talked about Dane Jackson just a few moments ago, and I had a chance to sit down with him earlier this week to talk about, where his situation stands. Most people think that Kaiir Elam is the heir apparent at corner 2, and then Trey White, whenever he comes back healthy, will be corner 1. But Dane Jackson's the only guy who is healthy and has played recently in the NFL and played at a decently high level. So I talked to Jackson about how encouraged he is about his opportunity to get some playing time, even if it doesn't end up being for the whole season. And, he had a very interesting take on what life is like for him as a 7th-round pick in the NFL. Dane Jackson got to be a starter for the first time last year when Trey White got hurt. How did he do?
Pretty solid, still a lot of work to do.
In those 8 games to close the season, Jackson learned a lot about being an NFL regular starter.
You got to have a routine. Coming from the practice squad, you don't really get that routine because you don't really know if you're going to be up or not. So just getting that routine going, the more games you play, you figure out your routine, and then it gets better every time.
But no matter how much he learned, the Bills still spent a first-round pick on Kaiir Elam. Jackson is doing all he can to help the rookie, even if Elam eventually, as expected, takes the starting job Jackson had last year.
We pretty much click instantly. There's no animosity or anything, it's all love.
4 years, it was Levi Wallace who every season had to fend off the hot new thing at corner. Even losing to Wallace last year in training camp, Jackson was impressed by the way Wallace never wavered. And now, like Wallace, Jackson believes the challenges to his spot will never stop.
Coming in the 7th round, they're always going to bring in someone to, try to take your spot. Whether it's good or bad, whether you do good or bad, it's always a repeated cycle. So you just know, like, after the season, you might get that, so you just got to keep going.
Jackson says in Buffalo, position battles aren't really battles. If you can teach a teammate something, it makes the team better, which is what Jackson plans to do, even if he's not a starter. I talked with Dane about what he was working on going into this year, what things he wanted to get better on, and he said press coverage was one, but mainly it was off coverage. And he worked a lot with Terrell Johnson during the offseason. Remember, Terrell Johnson's the nickel corner. Nickel guys will play off a lot more often than the outside guys will. So Dane was repping that over and over, trying to improve that. I said to him, is there a one play last year that you had in your head all off season thinking, I can't let that happen again? He said, now it's more like all of them. So it's an overall trait that he wants to improve, and we'll see if he did it as the season goes on.
Yeah, because when you focus on just man or press, the only coverage you can play is man. However, when you play off, you can play man, drop into cover 2, cover 3, and it allows Leslie Frazier to be a little bit more versatile in your schemes and trust you on the field to know, okay, when I have Dane Jackson out there, he's not subject to just one play call. He can play a variety of things. So that definitely helps out in that regard as well, again, some trust from the ODC. But we were also joined by Jeremy Fowler from ESPN, who handles some of the top 10 lists or the list position battles for ESPN coming into the season. There were a lot of Bills on there. Some of you guys were happy about where some of the guys were ranked, and not so happy about where some of the other guys were ranked. Great conversation, and Jeremy Fowler is up next.
I'm joined by Jeremy Fowler from ESPN, and this is the man that is more or less in charge of a lot of those position-by-position previews that you see where executives, scouts, head coaches are sampled throughout the NFL and talk about which guys they like the best. And, Jeremy, the one that always kind of gets me is how Tremaine Edmonds continues to end up in the top 10 at linebacker, when I think if you polled Buffalo Bills fans, they'd say Matt Milano is the better of the two linebackers. What's the take of how that happens, and what's the thinking behind it?
Yeah, so the way I shake it out is I take top 10 ballots from people around the league and scouts, coaches, and executives, and they send in their 1 through 10. And Edmonds does make more ballots, I think, because first-round pick who's got the big-time ability, he's got the range, he just doesn't maybe have the splash plays. And so I have, funny enough, had a few scouts ask me, well, how do I put Edmonds high when he might not be the best linebacker on his own team? Because Milano has a little bit more of that splash, maybe a little more of the pass coverage. But I think part of that is a byproduct of him playing middle linebacker. Maybe if he was off the ball a little bit, he could use that raw speed that he has to create more splash. But they've had him in the middle now for 4 years. So, he's clearly recognized as a top talent. He just doesn't have enough of the big plays to get in that, top 5. But he's got the ability to do that. His ceiling's probably higher than Milano's.
The other one that people always talk about just because it's the quarterback is Josh Allen, who I think was 4 this year in the poll. Either 4?
3.
3, all right, third.
Tied with Tom Brady.
So
I had to break the tie.
I think that the question, first of all, how did you break the tie?
Well, what I do is if there's like a tie or something really close, I'll go do like a recast, or I'll reach out to people
And just ask.
that weren't involved in the original voting, and I'll try to break it that way and ask them about both players and see who they prefer. And I think Allen just, this stage in his career and the ceiling that he has, he should only get better. The running component, he can beat you in a lot of different ways. Everybody knows Tom's great, of course, but he's really in the tail end here. Although we've been saying that about Brady for about 7 years now.
If not more than that.
Yeah, so you can make an argument for either guy, but Allen got a close tie break.
Let me ask you this. What do you think, and I don't know if this is a fair question because this might be better to ask the people where you're asking, but what would be the scenario in which Josh Allen ends up number 1 in that poll?
Well, you really need that kind of banner season to put it all together. Aaron Rodgers really made a jump to number 1 with the back-to-back MVPs. Without having at least one of those, I don't think he gets there. So Mahomes has an MVP, Rodgers has one. Maybe it's Josh Allen's turn. Somebody's got to get it this year. Maybe it's Brady, but whoever gets the MVP, it comes with a cachet that usually helps you in that type of exercise and really catapults you to a higher ranking. And I was talking to Von Miller today, and he mentioned, look, I've played with some great quarterbacks, Peyton Manning, Matthew Stafford, and Josh is right there in that trajectory for a lot of reasons, that whether it's the arm strength or the playmaking ability or the toughness.
One of the things this franchise has had for a long time is when you look at the roster, 1 through 53, they might have the best 15 through 53 in the NFL. They're always deep. There's always guys at every position. But now with Stephon Diggs a couple years ago, with Von Miller, with Jordan Poyer now as an all-pro safety, do you think this team 1 through 10 has the group of stars that you need to compete and win Super Bowls, which is what the goal is around here?
They certainly have enough to compete and win a Super Bowl, yes. And I would say, especially in the AFC, it should be fairly wide open, because you have the Chiefs are kind of retooling a little bit. They'll always be there in the mix, but without Tyreek Hill, they kind of have to re-identify their offense. You got the Chargers coming on. They're going to have one of the best rosters. AFC West is going to be tough, but those teams might cancel themselves out a little bit. And so, Buffalo, if they just stay on that AFC East track where they win the division, there's no reason why they can't make more noise. They have the roster strength to do it. Are they as top heavy as a few others, like maybe the Bucks or the Chargers or Rams? Maybe not, but they have, when I was doing that exercise about position groupings, like they had a lot of guys in that 11 to 15 range too. So if you count that, it's not, they don't necessarily have like the star power of having, the best at every position, but they have a guy at every position that's going to be among the best. And so I think, pound for pound, that puts them in really good positioning.
Jeremy Fowler, good stuff. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
So with the Bills being off tomorrow and the Pats coming back on Monday, I'm very interested to see what Terrell Bernard does. Like I said earlier, the young guys, you want to see how they react to the physicality of the game. And he's a guy who, on his collegiate film, very physical, flying around the ball and making plays in the backfield. We haven't seen it thus far in this camp for a variety of reasons. I believe that's kind of out of his control a little bit in terms of reps and just the design of the practice. But he's a guy who could possibly, start next year depending on what roster decisions come down and happen. And who knows, maybe he plays a little bit more this year than we expect. So I want to see, we've been focused on, the DBs and the linemen. Bernard, 3rd-round pick. I'm interested to see how that athleticism and physicality come to the table when the Pats come on.
That's a great call. The one I'm looking forward to seeing, and I don't know how soon we're going to see it, is still Spencer Brown. With the pads on now, it's kind of live. We can kind of get a look at what kind of tackle he's going to be. This was the guy that really struggled last year against the pass. You know what you have on the other side in practice right now? You have Von Miller, one of the nastiest pass rushers in the NFL. So if Spencer Brown can even hold his own with Von Miller in a practice, that's something that I'm interested to see what kind of growth he can have there. The other thing I want to see, the old goal line drill. The one time in preseason, at least at camp, we can see the teams go full out, tackling. Trust me, Josh Allen ain't carrying the ball over these. This is going to be running backs, hitting, real football. We usually get 3 or 6 snaps of it a year. Best 3 or 6 snaps that you can see in training camp.
And I'll say that as a DB, I hated that drill every single time. I was definitely in the back, waiting, taking the helmet off, making sure no one called my name to get in there. So shout out to all the guys who are actually doing that drill. It has not dawned upon me that drill is very physical.
Yeah, I used to say that those guys play the H5 position. It's the high five. Good job, brother. Nice job. Good play. All right, that'll do it for us. For Carl Jones, I'm Thad Brown. We'll be back again on Monday. Remember, the Bills, like Carl said, are off on Sunday, but Buffalo Campday Recap will be back on Monday evening. You can always watch us at RochesterFirst.com. You can watch us at RochesterFirst.com. Always helps to get the website correct. And you can listen to the podcast version on Spotify. Again, for Carl, I'm Thad. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll see you on Monday.